Hello. The video that follows creates 5 queries in the Power Query Excel checkbook that contribute to automated assignment of credit card expenses to categories. It demonstrates Power Query merge and group by functionality, as well as some column and filter features. I hope you'll find it useful.
This is the third video in the Excel Power Query Checkbook series and creates the queries needed to automatically categorize checkbook expenses. We're using Credit Card 2 as our example, and we've already created the CC2 report. We're going to need queries from 2 tables in the Categories worksheet. One here from TableCat and one here from Table Names. Let's start with TableCat. Just click anywhere in the table, and from the Data tab, get data from table range. And we can see that Power Query immediately grabs the table and does some changes to the types, the data types. We'll look at the source for a moment, and we'll see it says Excel Current Workbook, name equals TableCat, and content, and that's the way a Power Query will reference a table that's in the Excel workbook. If we go down to change type, these are almost right. We certainly want text on organization category, but the factor should be a percentage, so we're going to change that. Click on the factor column instead of whole number, percentage. And we'll replace the current, and now we have all the data types correct. This is all we need from the category table, which is going to be used to merge with our original report query. So let's go ahead and rename this personal preference. You can keep the name Power Query gives, but I don't like the spaces because it includes the hashtags and the M code, just a personal preference. And we're going to close and load and make a connection. Close and load to connection only. And we'll follow an analogous process for table names. Click in the table, from table range. We have organization and standard name. Those are both texts, so that's fine. We go to the source, we see it still goes to the current workbook, table names and content, so the code is completely analogous. Down here, just gonna rename this, set type. And load as a connection. So we're going to use those for merges. Let's go ahead and make the first merge. We'll go to the CC2 report, right click on it, and we'll go directly to merge here. And we're going to merge with TableCat. The columns that are going to be used to compare are the description and the organization. We can see we have 7 of 10 rows matching. We use the left outer join, which means we return everything from the CC2 report, but only what matches from TableCat. We can see we're going to not get some matches, and that's going to happen inevitably as we have expenses from places that are not already in the TableCat, but it'll be easy to add them. So let's click OK. And we have our merge table. I'm going to rename that to CC2. This is since it's credit card to CAT. And now we can see we have the TableCat table. I'm going to expand that with the double arrows. I'm not going to use the original column name as a prefix. Don't need that. Don't need the organization. But I'll take the category and the factor. Click OK. And there they are. We can see we don't have the matches. And one of the first things we're going to do is let's move over to the amount column, and I don't want to see the payments. This is going to be used to categorize expenses. And it's quite handy here because the payments are positive, the expenses are negative, so we're just going to keep the expenses by hitting the down arrow. Going to the number filters, it's going to be less than 0. And that should only keep our expenses. Okay. And now, as is my custom, I'm going to rename. So this is now expand categories. And this is now keep expenses. Now let's distribute the expenses, accounting for the factors that we have in the category table. And we're going to add a new column. So let's go to Add Column. And it's a custom column. And we're going to call this Spend. This is our Spend column. And we have a formula. We're going to use an if statement. If the factor has nothing, if it's a null, then just put in the amount. If not, take the factor and multiply it by the amount. We see we have no syntax errors. Let's go ahead and put the column in. And there it is. Going to rename. This is my calc spend. And now we just want to keep the categories of interest. So we want to keep the description. I'm holding down the Control key. And the category. And then the amount spent. So we're going to keep those. So we go to Home. Remove columns, remove other columns. Rename the step to Clean Columns. And now we're going to close and load, but this time we're just going to do a regular close and load. We open up a new worksheet. And there it is, it's CC2Cat. And this is our first table that we're going to use to automate categories. We're going to take the worksheet, just call this worksheet CC2, and provide an empty row at the top. This is just for uniformity as we continue to make other tables. We'll also go ahead and take the spend column here and use accounting format. Before we move on to our next query, we do want to correct for these expenses which are not yet in categories. So this is how easy it is to correct. We just grab them, Control-C to copy, bring them over to the categories area down below categories, and we're just going to paste the values. And now we just have to put in what they go to. The S1433 is a travel, and that's 100%. And the G1912 is mostly groceries, but this time we've also bought some household items, so we're going to give household 20%. Now we're going to see later that we can change to our exact amount that we're going to use. So now back to our standard names. We just grab this, copy that. And this will be done on a regular basis, but it's really easy to correct. And of course, since we're all creatures of habit, as we buy more and more things, the corrections will be less and less. So we're going to call this S143, 1433. And this is going to be our G number 1. frequently, depending on the credit card, the designation for the vendor, the same vendor, may come with different types of characters connected with it, and this will allow us to bring it all under one standard name. So that's all for the corrections there. I guess we can go ahead and, well, why don't we sort by standard name? And we can see we've got a lot of G1s. And we will sort A to Z here. So that's how easy it is to correct. Let's go back to our CC2, refresh the query, and we can see that we have categories now throughout. And we will, in fact, make a correction with the groceries and household later. The next step is to merge the category query with the names, the standard names. So let's go ahead and right-click and merge the category query. And we're going to merge that with the names, the table names. And the org is going to be compared with the description. Once again, it's a left outer join. We have an 11 of 11 match, and of course we made that correction when we looked at the categories worksheet. Let's click OK. We have our merged query. I'm going to call this CC2 STD for standard name. Expand the table names. We don't need the original column name. And we won't need the org, we just need the standard name. And there it is. Let's go ahead and rename this. Next, we group the spend by standard name and by category. So let's hit the little group by button here. And there's our group by. We're going to go to the advanced because we both want standard name and category. And the new column name is going to be called purchases. The operation is going to be a sum, and we're going to sum the spend. Okay. Now rename. And in order to have these rows fit appropriately in the transaction worksheet, we're going to add a column called trans type, and that'll just say expense. So let's go ahead and add a column. Custom column. This is going to be our trans type column. And all we're putting after the equal sign is the text string expense. That's it, nothing else. Click OK. And we rename that. Now all that means is reordering the columns so that purchases is last, and I'll just drag trans type over. And the renaming of the first column to description. Let's go ahead and do the renaming of the steps. And we are ready to load this. So let's go to Home, close and load to. And this time we're going to load this to a table. And it's going to be in the existing worksheet, and it'll be one column away from our previous table. Click OK. I'm going to change colors here in a minute, but let's go ahead and do this on accounting format. And we're going to change the style of the table. Now we'll have one remaining query that'll clean this second table and make it ready to transfer to the transactions worksheet. But this last query is going to use the table, not the query, so that we can make changes in this table and get it over to our transfer table without affecting our ability to work with the next month's credit card statement. So I know we actually spent $300 on groceries, enter as negative, and $239.66 on household. So I've made the necessary corrections, and that's inevitable as well. When, especially for making big purchases, it's not possible to know every method of distribution, but we've made the corrections here, and this table will still pull from the category query just fine when we move through next month's expenses. Time to create the last expense table, and that's coming directly from this table, not from the query. So let's go ahead and click in it and do what we've done before. From table range, we see this is going to be CC2 standard 2 because we've already got a query by that name, but we're renaming it CC2 trans for the transfer to the transactions. We'll keep the same types, they're all fine. And all we're going to do here is just eliminate anything that has no purchases. So in the purchases column, we use number filters, and we just don't want anything that's 0. So does not equal 0. And that will take out anything that doesn't include a purchase. Going to rename that to remove zeros. And before we close and load, let's go to the source. We can see the source says Excel current workbook CC2 standard. So it's getting its results from the table. And that's important that it doesn't use the query, because that allows us to make changes in the table without affecting the way the query will work when we see a new credit card CSV file in the next month. Okay, let's go to Home, close and load to. Going back to a table, an existing worksheet. It's going to be right there, one column away, and let's go ahead and click OK. And once again, changing the format, going to make that red, make that accounting. And this is the table that will now be transferred to the transaction worksheet. I'm going to add just a couple of labels up here. This will be charges. This will be charges with standard name. And this will be the clean table for transfer. Before we go, let's add totals rows to our tables. So click in the table, and in the table design, total row, click in the table, total row, click in the table, total row. Okay, let's give this enough room so that we can see the total. All right. That's it for now.